Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello and welcome to episode 64 of Mythos Busters. My name is Nick, and with me, almost as always, is Ian. How you doing, Ian?
Hello, I'm good. Tired a little bit, but good.
I hear ya. This is a Saturday night recording for us, the Saturday before GenCon, and we were just talking about how we are excited to have some time off. I'm really excited for like that 2 days off that I have right before I leave for GenCon. Like I plan for those just to be. I plan for them to be lazy days, but they probably won't be. I'll probably be scrambling to make sure I have everything gathered and good to go.
Yeah, I have work, and I have most of the game related stuff done, but then today, as I was thinking, I was like, there's still all these little things that need to be done to be ready.
Right. Yeah, I was doing that too. I was packing my bags, and I had my GenCon game box, which is like the decks that I'm bringing for various card games and dice and D&D stuff. I have that, together, and it's just a little box. It's like a shoebox size. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, I'm packed. And then it literally took me like 10 minutes before I was like, wait a minute. No, I need like toothpaste and deodorant and clothing.
And clothes. And you can't just paste the cards to yourself.
I mean, I can, but I want to continue to have friends.
You won't stand out too much at GenCon.
That's true. That's very true. No, I'm very excited to go. Also, I'm excited. Well, I mean, we'll talk about that as our main topic. So before we jump too far into the GenCon plans, let's talk about Arkham a little bit. Ian, what have you been playing lately?
Well, not as much as I'd like, because a lot of my time that would be playing has been in GenCon preparation and building decks for like 4 different games. But when I have had a chance, it's mostly been just preparing for my Abandoned and Alone stuff. So that's been good. I'm playing solo Joe Diamond through Return to Dunwich Legacy, and he's done very well through the first 2. But we'll see. I mean, that was never so much my worry. My worry is more like things like Undimensioned and Unseen, which asks a lot of willpower for a 2 willpower guy.
I was going to say, overall, I think Dunwich is probably a good campaign for Joe Diamond because it's kind of lighter on those harsh encounter deck tricks, and it's very much more about enemy management. Like, it seems to me to be and it could just be because it's the first one we got, but the most vanilla of the Arkham campaign so far.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and it also is. I don't know if this is true. Maybe I'm going too far out on a limb, but
well,
I feel like. I feel like Dunwich also, even more so than some of the other campaigns, has some very picky scenarios that really ask specific things of you, like Undimensioned and Unseen, like
Essex County Express.
Yeah, Essex County Express. I guess those are the 2 main ones I'm thinking of.
Well,
but, the nice
Doom
thing
awaits.
is, the old version of Where
classic,
Doom Awaits. Yeah, the classic. A classic in terms of age, but not necessarily in terms of quality. But
not in our hearts.
But the nice thing about Joe's Hunch deck is that you can adjust it before each game, so it makes them a little easier to adapt. But I have to say, the MVP so far for that deck is the Hawkeye folding camera.
Really? That's interesting to hear.
I don't think for necessarily the other Seekers, with some exceptions. Right. I think there are some cases, but for Joe specifically, because it boosts his will up to 3, which feels like such a huge difference, and then the second resource boosts him up to 5, and all of a sudden he's like a daisy, and then the final one it seems like which boosts your sanity, seems like it's just a little little cherry on top, but that can actually save you sometimes. So yeah, Solo Joe, I highly recommend. I don't think I'll go without a camera from now on.
So you've played him in 2 scenarios so far, you said?
Yeah.
How out of those 2 have you gotten the camera to 3 evidence both times?
Yeah, both games
wow.
that has happened actually. Yeah, because in Solo, like it's gonna go off because he's always gonna be there when the last clue is
that's true
taken off. Compared to
it's not like there's another investigator pulling clues for you.
Yeah, like in multiplayer, I wouldn't necessarily say, "Oh, always take the camera," but Solo Joe and other investigators as well. Solo, like it's gonna trigger most games as long as you can get it early, like in your opening hand.
I think that's kind of what throws me off to it is like not only not only do you need to be the one getting the clues, which Solo whatever, but the fact that like if you get it late game, it's kind of like, well, shoot, you know what I mean? Like I could have used this 4 turns ago or something. Yeah, and then there are also some scenarios, not so much in Dunwich, but there are some scenarios in other campaigns, and of course now I'm struggling to come up with an example where you're not always like pulling clues off a locate. Oh, wait, are they all? No, I guess Echoes of the Past you have to fight them off of cultists, but other than that, never mind. Ignore that point.
Yeah, well, the biggest loop was the one I played first. House Always Wins, because it's only like that initial location. But that's where I'm at. I have Malison as one of my allies, so I had some nice Malison jank going on where I threw the clue on a location to shuffle an encounter card back, and then I peeled that clue off, and that counted as a camera activation. So
that's so Malison's great. I love Malison.
Yeah. So that I would like to have said that I planned that out in my brain, like Camera and Malison together. I didn't quite, but I'll take credit for it now.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah. Oh man, because I have a janky ass Roland solo build that uses Malison and Inquiring Minds and Art Student and just all this, total jank and Vantage Point to not only clear clues quickly, but to also throw them around and, like keep shuffling them around the table so that you can keep your stuff activated. It's not great, but it's fun. I wonder if Hawkeye Folding Camera might have a place in that deck.
It could.
He asks, yeah, I didn't expect an amazing, immediate yes, but yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, even just that initial clue to get +1 will, it makes a difference for a lot of investigators.
Yeah, I unfortunately haven't been able to play too much Arkham. I know there's been a lot of people talking, especially in our GenCon chat Discord channel about Discord GenCon channel in our Discord server. There we go. About testing their GenCon decks, and I really haven't had the opportunity yet. I was in a play that just finished up this week, and then I've been covering evening shifts at work while my coworkers go on vacation, so I really haven't had an evening free in at least a month. So,
wow.
So I haven't really tested my GenCon decks, unfortunately. I'm going to hope they go well. But maybe I'll get in a game or two to test out my Zoe or my... I'm actually bringing Joe, so maybe I'll test out my Joe deck as well.
Yeah, testing has not happened for me either, really. I had ambitions of testing, but I at least tested one of the decks, which I'll talk about when we talk about what decks we're bringing, but that just consisted of me drawing a couple of opening hands and playing out the first turn and seeing how it would go, but I didn't get much beyond that.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I did with my Zoe build. And host Scott, who's unable to join us, but he's in our chat right now, says that 49 experience needs no testing, and I totally agree. And all 3 of the decks I'm bringing are 49 experience, so yay. All right, we have an Orbits contest to follow up with. I know that originally when Sean pitched this idea and we all announced it, I think 5 episodes ago, we said that we would have a new contest every episode, and they would wrap by the following episode, but it's GenCon, and we're obviously all very busy, so I apologize. We do not have a new contest for this episode. Look for the final contest to be announced on the episode following GenCon. And also, I'm going to put an asterisk behind that and say that might be our post-GenCon episode, so we might not even announce a contest then, but we're definitely, we're going to shuffle it ahead one episode for now. And instead, we're just going to cover closing out this current one, which was building a deck using what are often considered bad cards.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one, we got quite a few entries. I was surprised. I kind of thought that building a deck would be an entrant, or like that would be an entry. Like if I saw the contest was like build a deck, I'd be like, I don't want to build a whole deck. You know what I mean? But I guess when you're giving away free stuff and it's a game that you like to build decks for anyway, people sure came out and gave us some good stuff to select. So Ian, why don't you talk about? We're each going to pick 2, and then we're going to pick a random one from those 4. So, Ian, why don't you talk about one of your choices?
Sure. I'll just say overall, yeah, I was pretty blown away with the response and like the creativity of. This is why I like this kind of thing, like picking a bad card to build around, because then you start seeing these creative builds that like kind of break out of the usual just way that you see all these different investigators built. You kind of see the same cards after a while, and it was cool like looking at these and saying, oh, there's a lot of room to maneuver here at this point. That being said, it was hard to narrow it down. My first pick was, let me find the right name here. This was a York Mono a Mono deck. And this was created Tom Blackburn. This was done by Tom Blackburn. And
you picked the same one I did, so I'm going to close that window out.
This was the Eye of the Tiger deck. Yeah. And this was based around Mono a Mono, of course. But then he took it a step further, and taking the Eye of the Tiger theme, his deck description is basically the lyrics of Eye of the Tiger, the song. And then he has links to the different cards in his deck, like Rising Up, Back on the Street, Rising Up is Rise to the Occasion, Did My Time, Took My Chances is Lucky, Went the Distance, Down, Back on My Feet is linked to Perseverance. Like, he just goes through all the song lyrics, and it's fantastic, and I love it. So, yeah. Kudos to Tom for that one.
Yeah, no, that one, I had picked that one out as well, just because, like, one of my requirements was, like, I would look, and if they had a description, then I would, that would, like, it would be pushed to the forefront of my attention. If they didn't have a description, I would, like, peruse through what cards they had picked, but ultimately I was looking for descriptions to tell me, like, just tell me what the bad cards are. And, yeah, that one, like, I just glanced at the description, and immediately I was like, wow, that was awesome. So I'm glad that you picked it. The first one that I'm going to pick is Mark making the Springfield suck less. Just because I want that. I want that sniper build to be usable. I want it to be a thing, but the cards we have for it just aren't great right now. And this is by Kyle Critelli, Mark making the Springfield suck less. And it's pretty much, he's got double Springfield in there, he has Colts in there as well, and then he combines those with Warning Shot to push enemies away from himself. He doesn't have... Oh, man, like, if I were doing a Mark Springfield deck, I just thought of this now, I would totally have Elusive in here, but he does not have Elusive. He instead has Act of Desperation to get rid of the Springfields or the Colts when they're empty.
Nice.
It's pretty much mostly a standard set Mark deck with just a shift in focus onto the Springfield. But I like that he's trying to make that a thing. Like, kudos to you.
Yeah. Definitely. I like the idea of... it's still on my plate of trying out a Springfield telescopic sight deck at some point. Originally I was thinking of doing one for GenCon, but didn't quite make the cut this time.
Yeah, and he didn't throw marksmanship in there, so he's not getting the trifecta of the cards. But I would argue that marksmanship is the most playable of those 3 attack an enemy at another location cards. So, all right, what's your number 2, Ian?
My number 2 was constructed by David Richardson, and this is a Skids Colt Vest Pocket deck, which immediately got my interest. And David starts off describing this deck saying that Colt Vest Pocket is obviously the best weapon in the game. So this deck is all about using it over and over again as much as you can. So there's some funny / interesting ideas in here, like putting maintained on it so that when it's discarded at the end of the turn, it'll come back to hand. Sleight of hand, obviously. This was one I liked, having teamwork, so you load it up with extra ammo with contraband and then teamwork it when you're done with your turn over to someone else. Because it gets discarded at the end of the round and not at the end of your turn. Yeah. What else? Yeah, it's just funny. Oh, and then of course, like, watch this, Double or Nothing, and Quick Thinking. Because you have to, like, just pile everything onto the Colt Vest Pocket. So it's just a really funny idea behind the deck. I don't know how well it would actually work, but there's some creative ideas in there.
I am absolutely in love with the image of Skids pulling out a Colt, firing it off like 3 shots, boom, 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 and then tossing the smoking Colt to, like, Daisy, who catches it and is just like, what do I do with this? Like, I just love that image that my mind just created.
Seriously, just, like, passing it to the member of the party who's, like, the least equipped to use it.
Who's going next? Here, just take it! And it's like the gun's still smoking.
Here you go, Wendy.
I love that. Oh, that's great. My next pick it's called Alchemist Rex and His Suppliers. This one was made by, let me get the name on here. I think this is Paul Johnson, his Joey the Rat. Yep, Paul Johnson with his Joey the Rat Rex deck. So he's trying to make Joey the Rat work. And I would argue in not the most obvious investigator. Like, obviously, when you see Joey the Rat, at this point, you probably think Preston or maybe Jenny or Skids or someone who's good at hoarding money. And Rex has to jump through a few hoops to do that. But what he has going is Shrewd Analysis plus Joey the Rat Vigil plus Charles Ross Esquire kind of make up his the basis of what he was starting with this deck. Not only that, like, not only is Joey in here, who is largely considered one of the less good cards, Charles Ross Esquire is in here, and he's also an ally that I would argue does not see much play at all. But then he's also running Backpack, which is another bad card. Like, this has just bad cards left and right. Which is, I mean, so he's really going for it. There's not really a whole lot in here as far as crazy load up the Colt and toss it to someone, but I just love that he's committing to this Joey Charles Ross, like this supporty Rex build that's focused on getting stuff out cheap and helping the plan. So
yeah, and I love that it's Rex who's, like, been so pigeonholed as a kind of one-trick pony Hoover investigator, and for a long time I've thought, like, oh, I wish I just want to take the time to build a Rex deck that does something different, and this certainly does that. So,
yes, it does.
Yeah, and I'm a Joey the Rat fan, so actually saw in this and a couple of we got some entries for Preston Joey the Rat, and they had, at least one of them had Backpack as well, and I don't have Backpack in my Joey the Rat Preston, so I maybe should have had Backpack there, because I like that idea, actually.
Yeah, it's, it's still just 6 cards, which I think was the sticking point that we all kind of hit with Backpack. But if you're already trying to make Joey work, then that kind of gives Backpack a little bit of extra mileage, I think. Or maybe it's the other way around. Backpack gives Joey some extra mileage. But not only that, but this is also a 0 experience deck, which I didn't really note on the previous ones if they had experience or not. I know my Mark one was an experience deck, but this one's 0 experience, so you could build this one and run it through a campaign now and see how it works. I would bet it would do okay. All right.
Yeah, there's so many creative ideas. I'm gonna I don't want to make promises because GenCon is coming up, but I'd love to find a way to post this maybe on our website. I can put together just an article with some links so people can check out all these decks, because I would hate to see this work go to waste. People should see what everyone came up with.
I can definitely make sure that all of the entrants are represented in the episode show notes, so anybody listening to the episode can just click or tap on one of the deck links and see the list. Because there are some other really cool ones in here too.
That works too.
All right, so if we just go down the list, 1 through 4, we've got Tom Blackburn with the Yorick Mano a Mano as 1, Paul Johnson with Joey the Rat as 2, David Richardson with Skids Colt Vest as 3, and Kyle Critelli with Mark as 4. I don't have a die on me. Do you have one, or am I doing a random number?
I can roll.
Okay.
I can roll. Let me see.
Great.
And we get number 1. That is Eye of the Tiger. Tom Blackburn.
Awesome. Congratulations, Tom. You can feel free to email us or send us a message on Facebook or on Discord, and we will get in touch with you about your reward, which I'm not sure what all has been handed out already. I know there's a few different things. But yeah, as far as I know, Sean's in charge of the prizes, so when he's back, he'll definitely make sure that he gets in touch with you.
Dun, 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 dun. This is where we're going to insert that into the episode, right?
Oh, yeah. Less than 15 seconds, though. We can't do more than 15 seconds.
Yeah. Don't want to get in trouble.
Got to keep it legal. Speaking of legal, Ian, why don't you talk to us about our legal patrons? I mean, they're not legal patrons.
Our board members. First off, thanks to our board members. That is Chris B, Chris H, Chris U, our conglomeration of Chris's. Cyclos, Alex, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilio, Nathan, Chad, and Robert. Thanks to our 13 board members. You do so much to support the podcast. I can't really appreciate our thanks enough on that. Special shout out to a random patron this time around is Jarrett. Thank you, Jarrett, for your support as well. We do have a new job title this time around. For Ben Hawks, we've processed your paperwork through HR, and you have the much coveted position of Whippoorwill Wrangler. Whippoorwill Wrangler, try saying that 5 times fast. So we look forward to getting those whippoorwills in line finally. And, of course, this is our last chance to remind you about our GenCon Mythos Busters event, because next time we record, it'll be after GenCon, which blows my mind. But, yeah, so hopefully we'll see you on Saturday. Whoa, that is actually next Saturday now at 1 p.m. We'll see you there, hopefully. If you have a ticket, you'll be able to get our wonderful, beautiful, fantastic swag. Can't wait to reveal that. If you're not going to Gen Con, keep an eye on our social media, because we will be, during the event, doing our best to post as much as we can as far as like pictures of what the swag is and what we're doing. And so looking forward to that reveal. And then on Saturday night, we will be at the Slippery Noodle. And that is going to be around 8 p.m.-ish on Saturday night. So show up to that if you can, because that will be our big after dark party to celebrate the end of Gen Con. And it's always a great time there.
We played, how many rounds of Secret Hitler did we play last year? Probably like 5 or 6. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's always like one game that ends up being the game of After Dark, and I don't think it's able to ever be predicted, because I don't feel like it's ever one of the hot games of Gen Con or something.
No, it's never something current.
Yeah.
It's always something that's old, or that someone just happened to bring. Like 2 years ago, I remember I played a lot of Happy Salmon.
Yes.
And what was oh my gosh, there was one other one that I played a bunch, and it wasn't. Oh, Cobra Paw. I guess that one was current. That one was current.
Yeah.
We played a lot of Cobra Paw, yeah, and that one is still a household favorite here at my place. And then last year was Secret Hitler. That the nice thing about that is that facilitates. I think we had 12 people, 10 or 12 people playing at once. So that's really good, because then it goes from being that loud group of people over in the corner to being an event that everybody's suddenly watching. And even if you're not playing, it's fun to try and suss out who was what and pay attention to their strategies and stuff. So,
yeah, definitely interested to see what that game will be this year. And yeah, definitely we'll be living it up through the night. Unfortunately, I have an early flight at 6 a.m. the next day,
no!
but that is not going to stop me from living it up because
you can sleep on the plane.
Yeah, that's basically I've done that a couple years, where it's been like pretty much straight from after dark to the airport, and yeah. I'm a little bit wrecked on Sunday, but what are you going to do? You only Gen Con once. All right, and last bit of Patreon business is just mentioning that our musical episode is indeed out. We've had 4 listening parties so far. We won't be having any more. So the next time that you will have a chance to hear it, if you're not a patron, will be when we release it on our podcast feed in October before Arkham Knights. If you're desperate to get a hold of it now, you can become a patron, even for $1, and you'll have access to all that stuff.
And it is a gem. I know we've been talking about the musical episode for multiple weeks now, but I was thoroughly impressed and also proud of all of the work that went into it and how the final product came out. So definitely, if you didn't get a chance to listen at one of the listener parties, that's part of the thanks is because the patrons made it possible, so then they get access to it whenever they want, simply by throwing us that extra, $1 or more an episode. So something to consider if you want to listen to that now. Yeah,
and I think it's also the perfect driving to Gen Con or flying to Gen Con entertainment. So
it's almost like it was made for that.
Yep. You too can play roadside hot seat.
Oh God, yeah. No, it's great.
I don't recommend that. I have to put a disclaimer
definitely
on
don't.
that.
If you want to make it to your destination, maybe don't do that.
We're not funding anyone's medical expenses.
All right. As part of the whole getting into Gen Con and getting ready for Gen Con swing, I downloaded the official Gen Con app for my phone. And I signed into that just now, and as you were talking about the events and After Dark, and I was like, oh yeah, I should see if they have like a schedule editor and stuff like that. Nope, they literally just have whatever you bought tickets for. There's not even a calendar. They just list them in order, and I'm like, well, this was kind of a waste of download space. But apparently you can message people. I don't know. This is probably old news. I'm sure other people have looked at this app long before me.
Yeah, I did not even think to look for a Gen Con app.
Yeah, don't, because it's not great. So I'm going to keep it on there just because it is, like, as soon as you open it, it brings up the events that you're signed up for, so that's nice. But other than that,
that's something.
Yeah, that's, one click and you'd see, what am I talking about? It's trash. Don't download it. It's bad. Here I am making excuses for it. Gen Con doesn't need me to make excuses for it. Let's move on.
They really don't.
Yeah. So community highlights. We skipped last episode. This episode, there's a new blog on the internet called Deciphered Reality. It is a blog by visual analyst Andy. I'm gonna butcher his name. Cotgreve. Yep. Cotgreve. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna say that's how you pronounce it. It is a new blog. He only has a few posts up there now. One of them was announcing or talking about this Orbits contest that we just wrapped up. So kind of apropos that we discuss his blog now. But he also has a very interesting article called Who is the Worst Investigator in Arkham Horror? And he starts off just looking at their stats. And then he goes by popularity, and he really, the whole purpose of this blog is to approach everything from a very data-heavy angle, which is something that I don't think we see as much of currently in a lot of the YouTube videos and the blogs that we have around the game. Most everything kind of focuses on look and feel, initial thoughts when cards come out. Not a whole lot that actually just look at the raw numbers, as far as I can tell. And that's very interesting. So, for Health and Sanity, it's no surprise that Ashcan Pete is the lowest on the board there with 11. And then for stats, I mean, everyone could have guessed this. Calvin is the lowest with 0, but then he goes into it from there. He looks at, again, their popularity, the number of decks that are made for each investigator on ArkhamDB. And yeah, so like I said, check them out, and hopefully we'll be seeing some more interesting data-related articles. I would love to see the investigator, I don't know if he can do it, but the investigator with the highest damage output. I don't know if he can tie that. It'd probably be Mark. Or Zoe. Zoe has the ability that ties directly to damage, so I guess she has the potential for it. Andy, if you're listening, there's the next nut for you to crack.
Cool.
All right. Ian, do we have any news to talk about?
Compared to last time around, news was a little bit lighter. The one thing we did get was kind of a preview article called Visions in Your Mind, which is previewing the encounter cards of Return to Path to Carcosa, which means that Return to Path to Carcosa is right around the corner, which on the one hand, I'm excited about because Carcosa is... still my favorite cycle, I think. I still have to play the end of Circle Undone, so we'll find out then whether it displaces it. It might, because Circle Undone has been really good. But anyway, I'm looking forward to playing it again. But on the other hand, I already feel so behind. Like, how am I going to have time to play this thing?
I know. I finally got quasi caught up in Circle Undone. I still haven't played Clutches of Chaos, and I just got Before the Black Throne today, and I haven't sleeved it yet. But I'm up to, what's the one? Greater Good, and then what's the one right after? Union and Disillusion. Like, that's the last one that I played. And, oh my god, those scenarios are phenomenal. Now I see why you guys are shouting their praises from the hilltop, because they are, like, making the campaign for me. And it makes me a little trepidatious to see how the campaign ends. But I've heard nothing but good things, at least regarding Clutches, and I'm hoping that Before the Black Throne is the same. But yeah, Carcosa is just such a gem. It's just such a beautiful machine from start to finish. Like, its low point is what? Echoes? And even that isn't bad. It's just a little vanilla.
Yeah, it's just can be a little like straightforward and easy and solo. But yeah, that's not the greatest sin. So when you take everything together. Yeah, so usually we don't go over the encounter cards too much, so I don't want to spoil too much of what's in this article, especially if people want to go in completely blind. But there are a couple of cool things that hit on stuff that didn't necessarily get fully touched on in Carcosa, is what I'll say. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this one whenever it comes out.
Awesome. Yeah, I will. The one thing that I will say, and if you literally, I'm not going to consider it a spoiler because it's in the article, but I'm excited to see more hidden cards.
Yes. Yeah. Because there was some cool stuff done with it, but that's like an area where there's so much untapped potential. So I'm curious to see what kind of other effects they can put in there.
Agreed. Yeah, it was like the hidden stuff came out like in the box, but it really didn't get super interesting until like literally the last scenario of the campaign was when you really got the ones that are like, ooh, this is suddenly it's a choice. You know, normally you just kind of hang on to the hidden card until you absolutely have to get rid of it. But yeah. Anyway. Super exciting to see how it goes. And then next is rules, which we're going to skip because I don't think there have been any big rulings lately. And even if there have, Scott is our rules guy. And he's confirming in chat that there hasn't been anything. So perfect. So we're going to talk about GenCon prep. I think first and probably the biggest part of our discussion will be centered around Arkham prep, and not only Arkham prep, but specifically around standalone preparation. So not only just for GenCon, but anytime that you're prepping to play standalone. But let's talk about what we're bringing first. Ian, what decks are you bringing for Arkham this year?
Okay, so I have the first deck that I'm bringing was easy to decide, and that's Rita. And the main reason why is because I'm playing Rita in our Iron Man at Arkham Knights. And so I wanted to, and because she's a newer investigator, I wanted to get like a test run of some kind at GenCon and multiplayer before I devote like 8 hours or whatever it is to playing her at Iron Man. The second deck is Jenny. It's a big money, big guns deck. So this is kind of a variation on, I talked before on the podcast about how I was running a experimental solo Jenny deck that would like drawing Finn and Lone Wolf and just piling up cash and then funneling it into things like Well Connected and Many Talks and all those kind of cards. So this is a similar idea, except for because this is standalone and we're fighting some big blob. I'm also bringing the big guns with like the Chicago Typewriter and the what the I'm blanking on the card. The newer levels,
45.
The level 0 big gun that upgrades into level 3.
That's the 45 Thompson. Yep.
Yeah, the Thompson. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so big guns, big money. Kind of does what it says. And then the last deck is a... this is the one that's going off the deep end. It's a Tarot Lola deck. With Anna Kasla, with tarot cards, and just trying to leverage her access to all of them as much as possible, and then leaning on some of the neutral cards like Time Warren Brand to do the rest. So I don't think I'm going to play that for Blob because there's too much at stake there. I'm probably going to do Jenny or maybe Rita. But I will. I do want to pull out Lola at some point for some other time we play Arkham at Gen Con and try that out.
Maybe play against the Blob in not the official event.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, see how it goes.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if the Blob eats tarot cards or not.
It eats everything.
It eats everything.
I'd have to guess yes. I'm also doing something similar. I have one high damage deck. I have one deck that's kind of a test of our Iron Man, and then I have one that was just something that I was like, who's someone that I think is kind of fun to play, but I haven't played at full experience yet. So my big damage deck is the one I'm the most excited for because I am not doing Is There Any Card Other Than Shotgun? I've done that. I've done it a lot. So I'm going to try something a little different. I'm doing a Zoe flamethrower build. I call it Block Party Zoe because it's all about pulling enemies out of the encounter deck, taunting them to you. Like, not only do you pull them off your allies, but you also like run around throwing taunt out. So you get just this big threat area full of enemies and then just cooking them all with the flamethrower. So it's Block Party Zoe because she's roasting and barbecuing everything for everyone else on her team. No idea how it's going to work. Again, like we talked about earlier, I haven't tested any of these. But that one I did share with some friends, the deck list. I know I think I posted it in our mod chat. I know I definitely posted it in our Roll20 online Discord. And we talked about it in there, so I've gotten some feedback on it. That one I feel the most confident about, that it's kind of like at the best place it can be. You know what I mean?
Right.
Without actually having played it. My Iron Man test deck is Finn, because I'm playing Slippery Finn for Iron Man. So an emphasis on enemy management, primarily through evasion, and then with some stuff to actually remove them, and then some tricks to get clues off of locations. This one was harder for me to build, because I can build a level 0 Finn to fit this role pretty easily, but it was at 49 experience. I was like, well, gosh, what do I do? Like, what do I put in here? Like, I have access to everything, and I almost had, like, analysis paralysis, you know? Honestly, I couldn't even tell you what I went with now because I kind of just built it and then was done. And it's in the box, which is in the bag, which is up in my bedroom right now. So I can't reference it immediately. And unlike everyone else, I don't make an Arkham DB deck list immediately. I usually build them with the cards first, and then sometimes I'll transfer them to Arkham DB. But yeah, so that one,
interesting.
Again, yeah, I'm old school, I guess, like that, but...
I don't even remember what that's like, honestly.
But yeah, focus on evasion, focus on enemy management first with some tricks to get clues, Yeah, I think I might have even played with some of the action stuff, like Payday, and did I put Borrowed Time on there? I can't remember. I can't remember now. I remember considering it. I don't remember if I pulled the trigger on it or not. Anyway, and then the last one is a deck that I've played Joe Diamond in like 3 or 4 scenarios before, always with low experience because it was the start of a TCU campaign, my blind run, that I ended up trashing about 3 scenarios in. But I was like, what is a 49 what does a 49 experience Joe deck look like? So I did that. And that one it's capitalizing on the Guardian weapons that the Zoe deck isn't using because she's kind of throwing everything into Flamethrower. So he's pulling, pretty sure he has the 45s, the upgraded 45s. And then he's also, running, what's the name of the, God, I can't remember the name of it. The core box high XP seeker card that draws 3 for anybody. Is that Cryptic Research?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's running that. He's running Deciphered Reality. And then he's all about high mobility through Seeker and then pulling Deciphered Reality and just being a Seeker Guardian. Like, that's literally what he is. No idea how any of them are going to do because I haven't tested any of them, but I guess we'll see once I'm sitting. I definitely want to play Zoe for the blob. But if you're playing Jenny, we might have too much. We might be focusing too much on damage. So
yeah, that would be. I think between your Zoe and our Jenny, that should cover combat. So someone else could probably do take care of some cloovering. Well, the nice thing about the Jenny build too is it's kind of the way it's built. It can do some clue grabbing too, just because it's doing like the whole well connected thing. So that's at least like one investigate test per turn that's being done at some ludicrous intellect value, and then there's like Lola in there too to grab some clues. So it's going, but yeah, we'll see.
Oh, and I actually do have Block Party Zoe built on Arkham DB, so I can at least share that deck list here. I'm going to look at it over again real quick and see if I have anything that's investigate. Oh, that's right, I took grenades! I put grenades in there, I totally forgot about that. I'm pretty much going for anything that can deal damage to multiple enemies at once.
And then the upgraded Thompson does some crowd control too, so there could be really mowing down that I have in my Jenny deck, so there could be nice. Yeah, you have agency backup in there, so that could technically grab some clues too. Yeah. That's
right, double agency backup, and calling in favors, contraband, dynamite blast. Like, yeah, this is literally Block Party Zoe. This is like, get everybody together, we're gonna have a barbecue. Double guard dog, because bring your guard dogs to the block party. Yep, this is gonna be a fun. This is what I'm playing. I decided right now this is absolutely what I'm playing. Blob.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning Jenny for Blob just because it's a little bit experimental, but I mean it's pretty straightforward compared to Rita. I still feel like I'm learning her, especially multiplayer, and I'm not doing Tarot Lola for the official Blob. So it's probably going to be Jenny. The last question I have is just there were a couple tasty rogue cards that came out in Before the Black Throne, like the one that we revealed in our Look What I Found, the Uomi one. That could be an interesting multiplayer card. Don't know if it's interesting enough for me to stake Blob on it, but I thought about it. And then there's also what is it? This card is so new. Is it Double Double is the name of the card? I gotta look at Arkham VP.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it necessarily
literally just looked at those today.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it necessarily fits the deck exactly. Because it's not super event heavy deck, it's way more asset heavy. But I mean, if I'm going high money, I could potentially do like Double Double Hot Streak and just get insane money. So I have to think about it. I probably won't change it, but I might. we'll see.
Those exceptional cards are tough too because
Yeah.
of the forced one of, like, you can't double up on them to ensure you see it. So
Yeah, that's almost worse than the doubled experience costs.
Yeah.
is the fact that it's so unreliable to grab.
Mm-hmm.
And a ritual traded, like, what am I going to do with that? There's no fetching rituals.
Yeah.
It doesn't really help.
Ritual.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I'm hoping it'll go good. We'll see. But so all of your decks are 49 XP, right?
Yes, all three of them are. They're high 40s. They're at least 45.
Okay. I shouldn't be surprised by that by this point. My Jenny is 39. My Rita is 19. That's around where I usually build my Survivor standalones, because I don't feel like you get a ton of value of going super high XP with Survivors.
I would agree.
Especially with Rita's kind of limited deck building. Like, she's pretty much mono Survivor. And Taro, what the hell did I build Taro Lola? 39, I think. Yeah, she's 39. I couldn't quite bring myself to grab the last weakness with Lola. But
I'm pretty sure, I know one of them has Overzealous. I think it's Zoe, but I'm afraid it might be Joe. So, because with Zoe, it's like no matter what you draw, you're usually going to be okay.
yeah.
But with Joe, you're like 50-50. If it's a treachery, you're kind of up a creek. But if it's an enemy, you're fine. So.
Yeah, my Jenny has Overzealous, which hopefully I'll have enough in the tank to deal with that. the one that would have been a deal breaker is like, yeah, if I get Paranoia, then that's pretty much an instant kill of a big mini deck of any kind. So that would not have worked.
So with standalone play like this, especially with a big event like GenCon, how do you go about choosing the decks that you want to play and building those decks? Like, what sort of process do you have for a big event, situation versus just a standard 3 or 4 player game?
I think one of the main things that's different from like a Gen Con event like this blob event versus just a multiplayer game is especially this year, because they actually put some stakes on being successful. For those who don't know, if you win blob, I'm not sure exactly how that's measured. If you win blob, you get the special oversized blob card. So they're actually putting stakes on the thing. But I think just in general, I try for these official events to bring decks that I'm more familiar with, even if it's not necessarily the deck that I'm always using at home. I feel like I want it to be something that I kind of know for 2 reasons. One, because I want it to be somewhat successful. Like, I don't want to drag my table down with like my experimental build that who the hell knows if it's going to work. And the other thing too is I also don't want to like just be puttering it around and like taking like 10 minutes on my turn figuring out what to do. Like, if I'm experienced with a deck, then I kind of know like each turn what I'm doing. So those are the 2 things that kind of factor in. Yeah,
the funny thing is that I tend to go experimental for these big events. At least the last 2 years I have. Labyrinths was the year that I didn't really go experimental, I guess, but I did. Well, no, I did, because that was the first time I did 49 experience in a single deck, for at once.
Yeah.
And it was Roland. So I go experimental, but I also stay in the safety of the familiar. So I went with Roland, but I did 49 experience. And then last year I did Roland again, 49 experience again, but I twisted it up by going, I'm going to make my entire deck focus on shotgun. And that was marginally less successful than the previous year. Turns out in Arkham you can't really focus on one limited use asset as the core of your deck.
Right.
And then this year I'm going Zoe Flamethrower, which I've never used the Flamethrower before, but I looked at how the Flamethrower operates and I kind of built a deck that I hope will focus on that and also still be really fun to pilot. So I like to basically take what I know and what I'm comfortable with, like you said, but then I like to put a new spin on it or approach it from a different angle. I really like to put my deck on the table, say what it is, and watch the reactions of the people I'm playing with. That's where I get most of my enjoyment. And then if the game is fun, then great. But if it's not, then whatever. But other than that, like, I tend to go with investigators that I know. Like, Joe is the one that I played the least out of the three that I'm bringing, but he's still very much a straightforward investigator, in that he doesn't have a weird process or step-by-step, thing that you have to follow. He doesn't have a strange setup, other than his hunch deck is a little weird, but that's kind of a self-contained thing. You know what I mean? So it's not like I'm deciding that I want to do a Tarot Lola deck, for instance.
Sure, exactly. I think I'm with you there too, that despite what I just said, I always have an element of wanting to push the envelope a little, because I mean, ultimately these events, even if there are stakes, they're about fun, and like I think I'd have fun playing Arkham in general, but if I trot out the same deck I've played like for the 50th time, it's not going to be as fun as like, because on the one hand there are the things I talked about, considerations for your table and other players, but there's also the consideration of like, how often do these events happen? And there's something unique about pulling off, like, it's one thing to succeed at the scenario with, the killer cards, like, I beat it with Key of East, like, that's cool, like, no shade thrown your way, like more power to you, why not use it? But like, isn't it so much cooler when you're like, oh, I laid waste with like a 45 Thompson, or like just some of these cards that maybe wouldn't jump out to you as much, or this experimental build. So I think it's that combination of like, Jenny, I have played a ton, so I know her well, but throwing in some cards that I haven't used as much, so it's a little mix of both, I think.
Well, and it's important with an event, with any sort of event play. I mean, and on it, you could make this argument for Arkham in general, but with something like this, you want it to be a memorable experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And what you're playing, as far as the scenario, is only half of that. The other half is what you bring to it. And if you're bringing the same deck that you always play, or the same build that you always do, or anything like that, then it's just going to feel, it's probably, I would guess, going to feel closer to a home game than if you were to branch out and try something that's crazy or different to some degree. And again, it's just fun to see people roll their eyes and sigh when you're like, my deck's all about flamethrower. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I almost built Min's temporary plan, which is my Min deck that only uses events and has events and skills and has no assets. But I got halfway through building it and I'm like, no, I don't want to do this, because there are stakes to Blob, and if I were to play that, there would be people who would be like, oh my god, I can't believe this Seeker doesn't have, Milan, and doesn't have higher education and whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I want to at least give the facade that I care as much as everyone else. So
even if it's just a facade.
Right. Yeah.
Now, it's hard always to know, like, we get little tidbits of what the scenario is going to be that we play at these big events, but do you at all take, like, what you know into consideration when building a standalone for these events?
I really haven't. And it's largely because so much of it is unknown. And I started to think about that with Blob, where I was like, well, what if he eats, like ammunition or whatever? But then the whole idea is like, if you plan reactively, then the ultimate question just comes down to like, why even play the game? Like, why play anything? You know what I mean? Why play any deck if you're always going to be like, well, if he eats this, then my deck is bad, or then, well, that's kind of the point of the scenario. You know what I mean? And so I treat that very much like I treat weaknesses, where it's like, they're gonna happen. It's just gonna be part of the game. And so instead of being afraid of drawing my third or fourth or fifth weakness, instead I'm going to put all the tools and all the toys in my deck despite the fact that those weaknesses are there. And same thing with Blob. I'm going to build the deck that I want to play because I want to have fun playing it, and hopefully the Blob won't, like, straight up eat Nick's Zoe deck. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like, I think we've actually gotten more this year than we usually do. Like, I have to go back and look at the article, but when they like actually said some of the mechanics of what the Blob can do to you, whereas last year I think we just knew like, oh, it's going to be in Egypt or something.
right? Yeah.
So yeah, usually you can't really take it into account, but I agree with you that it's like, how much can you really factor? I guess the only way you could factor it in is saying, well, if it potentially eats things, then maybe I don't center my deck around one card like Key of Ys or something. But I don't think, like, just as a deck builder, I think I generally tend to build my decks with like several options for whatever I'm doing. Right. Like if it's a weapon, I build in several options. If it's a resource engine, I build in several options. So hopefully that'll stand me in good stead in case some of my stuff gets eaten. but we'll see.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's only so much that you can really plan ahead with something like this anyway. I think it's much more important to feel confident that you're going to enjoy the deck you bring, rather than, you know, hope that you're countering the encounter deck effectively, because ultimately you're not going to know. There's always, unless they're spoiling every encounter card, which, God, I hope they don't do that ever. But yeah. So how about Taboo? Are your decks Taboo friendly? Especially bringing Rogue, they got hit, you know, pretty significantly with Taboo. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, my deck is Taboo compliant. All of my decks are Taboo compliant, actually. That was just, I think in general, since Taboo has come out, all of my decks have been. And so far, I'm kind of comfortable with that approach. We'll see if we change. The thing is, it wasn't the biggest hit to Rogue is the Streetwise Taboo, of course. And that actually wasn't a big consideration for this deck because it's the pile up money and do the cards like Well Connected and Money Talks, etc. approach, and Dario Elmin, rather than the Streetwise, like, as soon as you get money, spend it to do stuff. And so, like, I was fine leaving Streetwise out of it because I probably wouldn't have included Streetwise anyway. So, but if I would have had to make that decision, I might have ignored the Taboo, to be honest. But I'm not sure though. I'm not sure. What about you? Have you? It hasn't hit Guardian too much, right?
No, it hasn't. And I am bringing a Rogue and a Seeker, but they're all Taboo compliant as well. Okay. I'm not running Milan in Joe. I'm not running Higher Education in Joe. So I know I could, but the deck fashions in a way that I don't feel that I'm going to need them. Hopefully, and then with Finn, I don't know if I'll end up pulling Streetwise for our Iron Man, because this is, a test run of the final build or one of the final builds of that. So I don't know if I'll end up pulling it or not, but I definitely stayed away from it just because I was like, 8 experience for one card, like, I don't know. So no, I stayed Taboo compliant. And then the only thing with Guardian that Taboo really, and I still catch myself, is Machete.
Oh yeah.
Because it's such a staple for level zeros for so long. And then I was like, building decks now, building Guardian decks. It's like, nope, Machete is not a starting option anymore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, someone in our chat was asking, is Taboo easier to deal with in standalone, where you can always add more XP? And the answer for me is yes, I think it is easier to deal with. Because you just get this pool of XP in a chunk, however much you're willing to take on. Where, like, it's much different saying, I'm going to plop down 8 XP for Streetwise out of 49, in standalone, versus I need to build up 8 XP over the course of like however many scenarios, 2 or 3 scenarios, and blow them all on Streetwise. Like, it's such a different feeling and kind of opportunity cost, I guess. So
yeah, we're not earning the experience that we have for these decks. So we're just giving them. We're just taking them from Matt. So.
Yeah. And getting a little weakness in return. But I think that's true too for just like kind of going off of that, just building for standalone in these events too. That's why it's kind of cool, like at least building a little bit of experimental, because like how often do you get the chance to, like basically in regular campaign play, sometimes your upgrades are kind of haphazard and you can only grab what you can when you can. Whereas building standalone, like this is your chance to not only build with high XP cards, but build with high XP cards like holistically, like as a whole unit, and like pick the cards that are going to work together. Whereas you can't always do it when you're just like grabbing upgrades when you can in campaign.
Standalone is very freeing. It's very liberating to play. Campaign, it's like you said, you're kind of, not only are you getting things here and there, but oftentimes you don't always have, at least the way I play, I don't have an end goal for the deck, like as far as composition goes. So a lot of what I'm buying is based off of the strengths and the weaknesses of the deck so far, how it's performed so far in the campaign. And then if you have one bad scenario, suddenly you're out, 3, 4, 5, 6 experience, however much you would have gotten. And that can be detrimental, because then you're progressing the story, but your deck isn't stepping up to meet that progress. Right. So that can be very, very difficult and very stressful. Whereas with standalone, it's literally just you pick the amount, like you determine at what point you're good to say, I'm fine with this much. You know what I mean? And if you're like me, you're a fucking glutton and you take all of it. But it's nice to just have that. And it's very liberating to just be like, this deck is going to function as a unit at 49 experience. And I didn't have to, decide all that one scenario at a time, 3 experience at a time. So,
yeah, and then I think you see that reflected in like the play in these standalone events. That these like standalone investigators are very much investigators at their peak, like their superhero form. Even though they have these weaknesses, and even though that doesn't mean they're gonna win all the time, they're just able to pull off these moves, which. Sometimes it's harder to do in campaign play for the reasons you say, because you're just kind of like reacting to the campaign and the story as it happens, rather than like optimizing this investigator. Right.
Totally. Yeah. No, I've always said that standalone is kind of like my home for Arkham. Like I've kind of learned that that's where I tend to have the most fun, which isn't always true. Definitely when I kind of go back and forth when I play a lot of standalones over and over again, that's when I really want to do campaign. But it's really nice to be like, these decisions are only going to matter for this one game. And once I pack up this game, then those decisions are basically done. You know what I mean? But yeah, moving on from that, is there anything else at GenCon that you're planning to do? Anything that you're looking forward to? I mean, we've kind of exhausted the Arkham talk as far as I can tell. Unless there's any closing thoughts or parting shots you want to make for Arkham discussion with GenCon 2019.
I guess I'm just really looking forward to this blob thing. Maybe more than any other event we've had so far. Like Labyrinths turned out to be really unique and cool, but I didn't really know what to expect going in. But everything I've heard about this is I don't know. It sounds so insane that I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So, and the fact that they put a little bit of stakes on it, even if it's not like world ending,
right?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I also think that it'll be interesting to see if the blob has legs, so to say. Because, like,
I hope not.
I mean, it's ooze, so that'd be weird. But Labyrinths was, I think, a more memorable experience for me between the 2 events that we played so far. But it's also one that I have played. I think I played it twice at GenCon when it came out, and then I didn't play it again. Like, I think I maybe played it once. You know what I mean? Whereas the Abyss scenario it didn't hit as hard at Gen Con. Like, it didn't impact me and my experience as much. But I've played that and its follow-up scenario, I think 5 or 6 times now. So it lasts longer, but it isn't as impactful. So I'm very interested to see where on that spectrum Blob falls. If it's going to, I think it's going to be very impactful. Like, that's going to be my guess. But it will be interesting to see if it's a scenario that at home, like when my wife and I play, I can be like, well, let's do the Blob that ate everything. Or if that's, once you're not in epic multiplayer, if that's going to lose its luster a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I've had the same experience with Labyrinths. I think I played it once afterwards, just because it's not quite the same, and solo especially, or just non-epic.
Right.
But yeah, I think this one will have legs, so to speak. I'm also curious what the kind of campaign bonus, if any, there will be for playing the Blob. Maybe a piece of Blob.
I was gonna say a mini Blob.
Oh blob. My gosh, I want a mini Blob ally. I'll take that.
What's the Japanese game that's like oozes, or Dragon Quest? Is it like Dragon Quest Ooze? I don't know anything about Dragon Quest. I just know they have like oozes as their mascot. Well, someone in chat might know.
It does remind me of one of my favorite NES games back in the day was Boy and His Blob, where you basically like have a little blob that follows you and you feed it different kinds of jelly beans, and if it's like one jelly bean turns it to a ladder and another one turns it into a rocket ship. So we'll see.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I want a Blob ally now. Hopefully Matt read our minds in the past.
If not, Matt, change it.
Change
you
it
got
now.
time.
Get those printers ready.
So what else are you looking forward to at Gen Con? This is kind of a weirder year, simply because 2 of the staples of our Gen Con group, at least of my time at Gen Con, aren't going this year, and they're also 2 of kind of the, I don't want to say influencers, but they're the ones who are very much approach Gen Con like, I'm going to go and do the thing I want to do, and you guys can follow with if you want.
Sure.
Those are Brandon and Brian of COTR fame. They are both sitting this year out. And so it's really kind of like the Arkham. This Gen Con's going to have more of an Arkham-focused feel, I think, for me, because of them not being there. Like I know Sean also said that this is the year for him to do other things. Like normally, like the last few years, he's just kind of walked around the exhibit hall. He's played Lord of the Rings a couple times, played Arkham a couple times, but this year he wants to try other games. And so I took that and I ran with it during event sign up, and I bought a bunch of tickets for a bunch of different role playing games, and I kind of just did a scattershot. I kind of just like found a bunch that sounded cool and then bought the tickets for the ones that I was able to. But now looking at schedules, I'm like, ooh, a couple of these I'm probably going to have to drop. Yeah. But at least I know that you and I are planning on playing, what's the name of it? Is it the Silver
Needle
Thread?
Or
Silver
Needle,
Thread,
yeah. Is it Needle or Thread? I'm not sure.
It's one of those. It's a sewing, Silver Needle, the One Ring.
Yeah, we're going to take up sewing at Gen Con. That's right.
I'm sure they would have a room set aside where you could learn like a sewing seminar.
There must be.
That would be there. But no, we're playing the Silver Needle Thursday at 1 p.m. It's a short session. It's only like 2 hours, but that's Lord of the Rings, The One Ring First Edition. So we're getting in a game of First Edition before Second Edition becomes the official. And Second Edition hasn't released yet, has it? Right?
Nope. It's slated for the fall as far as what they have announced, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of like the swan song, at least for us, for First Edition One Ring. I've never actually played the One Ring. I've only read it. So this will be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a cool set. Yeah, so that's definitely on my plate, and that's a cool. And similarly, kind of my vow this year is to spend way less time in the exhibit hall, because most years I feel like there's a lot of wasted time where it's just like, how many times can I circle the exhibit hall and see the same stands that I've seen like 5 times before? And I don't know why that happens, but it always seems to happen. So this year I'm like, I'm gonna do like one good circle through the exhibit hall, and as much as possible the rest of my time I want to play something. I mean, I don't care what it is, whether it's like pick up Arkham or LTR or a whole other game. But yeah, so that's why when you were saying that you were picking up some RPG tickets, I was like, yeah, this is a good year to do that. So I'm looking forward to playing One Ring. I've actually only played it as like a play-by-post type games.
Oh.
So yeah, so I'm looking forward to playing it in person. And it's a really cool system. Obviously, huge Tolkien fan. So yeah, and yeah, I do like that it's a shorter session because kind of my hesitance with a lot of like sessions I looked at, oh, maybe I can play a Star Trek Adventure session, but they're all like 4 hours minimum, which that might as well be like 2 days in Gen Con time.
Right. Yeah. Going back to what you said about the exhibit hall, like in my experience, which again has only been the 2 years so far, but in the absence of a plan,
Yes.
we exhibit hall. Like, that's literally what we do. Like, if we don't know what we're doing, we just wander. And then because we are wandering, and because when you're in the exhibit hall, there's all this stimulus of like, have I gone over here? What's at this booth? Why are all these people over here? You know what I mean? Like, there's, at least for me, that it's hard to then formulate a plan. Because you're kind of just like going with the flow, literally and physically, as you know, like a salmon in the stream with all those people. But yeah, so I think having at least something else on the docket other than the big, games that we're already expecting to play, you know what I mean? I think that'll help a little bit to break us out of that.
Yeah, definitely. The other big one on my plate is playing the Mines of Moria, Lord of the Rings card game event. So that's going to be similar in format to last year, where it's kind of the competitive variant of Lord of the Rings. So looking forward to playing that one. Last year, me and you took on Sean, and who was Sean playing with?
Brandon.
That's right. Yeah, so we won't quite get a rematch, but we'll see who else we'll play.
We'll see who's willing to step in with Sean and get him to hopefully squeeze out a win this year.
Who will fill Brandon's shoes?
The funny thing is that we like between you and I know we talked about this last year, but between you and I and Sean and Brandon, we almost built the exact same encounter deck. So it was like one set was different between us.
Right. Yeah. It was very, very similar, like the kind of approach we took to it. So yeah, so building decks for Lord of the Rings, I kind of had it in mind just to design basically two pairs of decks that would ideally work together well. So
right. Last year you made a Dale one for me, is that right?
Yep. And
what do you have for me this year?
What did I play last year? I can't remember. You had Dale, and I had. I think I had Boromir because I think I remembered it being like Battle of Boromirs because Brandon had Boromir, of course.
Oh.
I have one of my decks is an Elf Helm Mount deck, so it's just throwing horses all over the place.
Great.
Just tossing horses all over the board. There is a Grimbeorn deck, which is just like really good at killing things, as you do. I am bringing the Dale deck again because it's just so simple. And then what is the last? The last deck I'm bringing is a Caldara deck, like that obeys the Caldara. For those who don't know, is a hero in Lord of the Rings. You got an errata because she was kind of super overpowered. So yeah, it's a modern version of that deck.
Gotcha. Fun. I mean, you got Dale again. I love Dale. Also, the scenario that we're playing for the One Ring takes place in Dale. So that'll be fun. I could just be all... And our campaign that we played, not that you were... Unfortunately, you weren't there for that, but our campaign was largely in Dale, so I could just... Like, that'll be like Lord of the Rings for me of the last years.
Just all Dale all the time. And Casey in chat is sick of Dale getting me out. This is Dale's last ride, Casey, before a new cycle begins. So.
Yeah. Nice.
So soon it'll all be about the One Ring and Smeagol when that comes out in the box. That's dropping soon. Let's see. Other than that, speaking of Lord of the Rings, we're also both bringing Lord of the Rings TCG decks to potentially play at some point.
Let's talk about that. Everyone's favorite Lord of the Rings game.
Yeah, I'm sure people are riveted now.
So we'll keep the discussion of that brief, but I am interested. What are the basis of the decks that you're bringing for that deck or decks?
Yeah, I'm only bringing one. It's always interesting building for a game that you're new to. Like, I just recently got cards like. Well, I got some starter decks at last GenCon actually, and then I picked up a few cards since then. But still, like, this is my first real experience building a deck. So it is a Hobbit deck, Hobbit focused deck for the most part, with Gandalf. So like a Gandalf Hobbit team up, and then the other side of the equation is again sticking with the kind of the Moria theme, since we have a standalone in Moria this year. It's a lot of the Moria orcs type approach.
Moria orcs have always been one of my favorite shadows for the Lord of the Rings TCG because their swarm is off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
I know this will probably mean nothing to the vast majority of our listeners, if not all of them. But basically, to dumb down the economy of that game is the more the player who's playing their fellowship, the more they do, like, put into play, and the more they move and everything, the more Twilight is in play for the Shadow to use. And the Twilight is then their resource that they spend to put their minions in play. I was playing a game, and a friend of mine was playing dwarves who are notorious for being low Twilight. They don't put out much. And I think he left me with one Twilight. So essentially, one resource for Markham. And playing Moria Goblins, I turned that one Twilight into like 5 enemies and 2 weapons and a condition. Like, I put so much into play with it. It was ridiculous. I love Moria Goblins.
Yeah. I really love that system, that particular mechanic in the game. I think when you and Sean described that to me and just like learning it, that's what really hooked me. Like, it's such it's a cool resource mechanic in a card game that kind of helps to balance itself in a way. Like, you can play a bunch of overpowered stuff, but you're going to pay for it.
Totally.
Because they're able to pay for a bunch of bad stuff to attack you.
Mm-hmm. The other side of that coin is there was one game that I played turn 1. I was playing Rohan, and I got out 3 extra companions and mounts and weapons on literally everybody in my fellowship. And I think I had 20 Twilight going into Site 2, and my opponent played the Balrog at Site 2. It was totally, like, that was the first enemy I faced was the Balrog because I had all that shit in play.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of fun to see that balance. It's perfect in 2-player, but it's still really good in multiplayer. And then the 2 decks that I'm bringing for that, one of them, I only know their fellowship. I can't remember their shadows offhand. I'm pretty sure one of them is Moria Swarm. But, okay, so one of them is Aragorn and Arwen, and the flip side of that is Ringwraiths.
Cool.
Because they've always been my second favorite Shadow of Lord of the Rings. And then the other deck is a Legolas Gimli Legolas Gimli and Moria Swarm.
Nice.
So I operate best off of small fellowships, and then just flooding with bad guys. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to play that. I hope we can get a couple multiplayer games in too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that experience is. We'll see if we can rope Sean or someone in.
Right, yeah. That. I guess I don't know if he probably isn't bringing decks for himself. Maybe I should bring a 3rd deck just in case. Ooh, I don't know. I'm also bringing Wars. I'm bringing 2 Wars decks. I'm limiting myself to 2 rather than the 5 that I normally bring.
I do have to play that eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe this year is the year since I'm committing to play
Maybe this
games.
is it. Yeah, we'll play a game. Yeah, I know Casey, he owns cards. I don't know if he's going to bring decks or not. Casey, both of my decks are like terrible exploitative decks. Like my Quay deck. So I have 2 decks. I'm not gonna go into detail, but one of them is called Endless Quay, and the other is called Earther Control. And they're very much like that. One of them is all control, and the other one is the whole point of the Quay deck is for the opponent to be like, I killed all this stuff. Why is it still here? So
that's always fun.
Right? Yeah. So those are great decks. And I know that John from COTR is going to be bringing a Ganjin deck. They're like the Martian samurai. He's going to be bringing a Ganjin deck to play as well.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to play at least one game against him.
Yeah, I'm bringing in other dead CCG news. Our other favorite topic. Yeah, I'm also bringing a couple of Star Trek decks. Hoping to. I played with Caleb last year. For those who know, Caleb's LOTR LCG designer. So looking to play with him again, and I got a nice Borg deck that I constructed. So I don't expect to win because he is a former Star Trek CCG 2-time world champion. And he wiped the floor with me last year.
That was... Oh my god. I'm pretty sure Casey and I were playing Wars at that time, and we were sitting right next to you guys, and I just looked over and I was like, I can't tell what's going on, but I know that he's just mopping the floor with Ian.
Yeah, Casey, you're right. It was like watching a snuff film. So I'm not looking to win so much as improve my points total from last year.
Other things that I've got on my docket, looking at my GenCon schedule, I grabbed tickets to a game design seminar that's Thursday morning.
Nice.
Not sure if I'm going to go to that or not, but I figured, I was like, I've never done a seminar or anything like that at GenCon, so I grabbed those just to have them. And it's put on by the Role Playing Public Radio, which is a podcast that I've listened to for, I think, the last 8 years now. They're a great podcast. Very insightful group of hosts there. And then I have 2 other role-playing events that I have tickets for, but the schedules of these events either overlap with or literally bump right up next to events I have as well, other events that I have. So I think I have an Artifact Zero is the name of the scenario. It's a Delta Green role-playing game. For those of you who aren't familiar, Delta Green is modern Call of Cthulhu, where you play basically like Men in Black FBI agents that deal with the Cthulhu mythos. I use the Men in Black reference. It's not zany and out of this world like Men in Black is. It's much more grimdark and serious. Like, it's very dark, but it's really fun. And that one ends to the minute when I think our Lord of the Rings one begins. So I probably won't go to that one. And then the other one that I have is a Starfinder scenario. Starfinder first, it says first edition, but there's the only edition. Yeah. Anyway, that one actually overlaps with our Arkham game, so I won't be going to that either. So I paid for 4 tickets that I unfortunately won't be able to cash in on. So if there's anyone who is hearing this that's going to Gen Con that will be available, these are both during the day on Friday. One's in the morning, one's in the afternoon. And you're interested in grabbing those, I would be happy to hand these tickets off. But if not, then that's fine. They'll just be short 2 seats at those. I really wanted to try Starfinder, but unfortunately it's not going to work out this year.
Just show up and get yourself killed, like at a convenient time. You see a Shogoth, I give it a hug.
In Delta Green, I think it'd be super easy to do that.
Yeah, so. I'm sure it would.
Other than that, Mythos, our D&D campaign, West March's D&D campaign, we have our Gen Con game is happening Thursday night. Oh, yeah. We don't have a location exactly yet for that. We're going to kind of scout out and see what's available Thursday during the day and get an idea for there. But Matt and I will be the 2 DMs that are representing Mythos this year at Gen Con, and we spent today... we've been going back and forth with different ideas and all that, and adapting the point of interest, the dungeon that we'll be using, adapting it from its original concept into something that can fit, for this particular setup where we have 2 separate groups that are going to be running concurrently through this content. And then today we spent a couple hours really hammering those details home and fleshing out a lot of the ideas that we had previously. and I think we have 7 or 8 players right now, so everyone's gonna be split into 2 groups. And I think this is, I don't want to oversell it, but this is one of the things at the top of my list for what I'm excited for Gen Con this year. Just because of the ideas that Matt and I were coming up with.
I can't wait. Yeah, it'll be a return for me because I haven't been able to play Muris for like 4 months or so.
It's been a while.
So that's it'll be nice to return for that reason, and also to actually play in person in Muris will be a cool experience. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to having another character die in a special event too.
Oh, that's great. But I mean, you're what? You're level. You got
level 5.
Yeah. Well, you're level 5. Yeah, you're probably not 6 because 6 is a big jump.
Yeah,
but
that's a lot of XP to chew through.
Yeah,
I will be staying far back.
I was looking at our team composition, and of the 7 characters, 3 of them are rogues.
Oh no!
I'm like, oh great. There's 3 rogues, 1 fighter, 1 warlock, 1 cleric, 1 bard.
Oh my god!
So unless some of these people bring their alternate character, because now we've opened it up so that people can have 2 PCs. If they bring their alternate PC classes, otherwise we're gonna have half of them are gonna be rogue.
Casey's gonna be tanking like all alone.
Casey's character is a great tank though. Like he is decked out with equipment. He is super hard to hit. The problem is when you're playing against smart enemies, they realize after 2 or 3 swings they can't hit him, so then they go on to someone else.
I'm going to be trying to hide in the back, and then I look to each side, and it's the rest of the party next to me.
Right.
Having the same idea. Yeah.
No, it'll be fun though. I'm super excited because Matt and we're pretty much planning to play back to back because we'll be running, games. So like physically, like we'll be sitting with our backs to each other, with the tables in front of us. And then, there will be some moments where the players at each table can switch back and forth, and there will be moments where we get to really play with that dynamic. It'll be super fun. So really looking forward to that. Other than that, I mean, the listener event is going to be kick-ass this year.
Can't wait for that.
My God, that swag. I'm so excited for that swag to get into people's hands, and for us to start being able to talk about it. To
actually talk about it, finally, after so long.
And not dance around the subject. Yeah. It's hard to believe that's already next week. A week from today, we'll be talking about that.
Yeah, I know. Mm-hmm. I think the only other big thing I have going on is I've been working on I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, been working on a game prototype for a while.
Yes.
And so it's like originally in the ideal timeline, I was hoping to like bring it and actually like potentially show it to publishers and that kind of thing. But having a baby kind of throws things off. So this is more priorities. So I was like, okay, I'll just do more of a casual like playtest what I have, and like whoever I can wrangle into that be able to get a little bit of multiplayer playtesting in while I have tens of thousands of gamers around me. So
are you actually doing it in like their playtest hall?
No, it's more just like a pickup thing. I'm bringing the cards with me and just playing with people when I can. But Gen Con's always a hard thing to figure out, so we'll see how much I'll actually be able to do that. But like to actually have the option. So that's been taking up a lot of time too, is trying to prep that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. Is that something? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or is that something you'd rather keep pretty close to your chest until we play it?
I mean, I probably won't go into huge detail about it, but it's basically a card game, not a shocker, because I'm primarily a card game player. And it is science fiction based, so like a mission based card game. And basically letting people, it's cooperative and letting people control a starship, kind of acting as like a bridge crew of a starship and taking on different missions. Like that's the gist of it.
I'm excited already. What kind of format are you thinking? Is it going to be like you just buy one box and play that, or is it going to be like? I guess I mean, like, what the stuff that you have currently, is that something that you're planning, like, this is the game, or is it like everybody has to build their own decks and bring those, you know what I mean? Like, is it more like Arkham or more like Sentinels of the Multiverse?
It would be more like Sentinels, like you would buy the game and have what you need, and some of that is just practical. Like I'm new to actually getting one of my games actually hopefully published at some point, whether it's by myself or getting someone publisher to do it for me. And so like the practical part of it is like a lot of publishers, they don't want to buy into something that requires a bunch of expansions, you know. So I'm designing it's kind of like you don't want to like write a book and go to a publisher and say like, well, this is for part 1 of like a 6-book series, you know, because they don't want to take the chance on that, you know. So it's kind of like designing something that has plenty of room for expanding in the future, but can also like live on its own is the idea.
Well, it's also practical too, because then if for whatever reason you stop pursuing publishers, or if you decide to do it on your own, if it's a smaller product, it's easier for you to get printed and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So I've tried to keep those kind of things in mind too, like number of cards, how much would it cost to produce, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, all the stuff that's not as sexy and exciting, but you kind of have to think about.
Right. What's the expected playtime? Like, how long do you think it takes to play a game of it?
I would say probably similar to Arkhamish, I would think. Hopefully I would like to get it actually a little shorter than that if possible, but yeah, that's something that I would probably try to tweak over time.
Cool. 1 to 4 players?
Yep.
Nice. Try and go up to 5 to me is like the perfect. I know it's hard. I know it's, as someone who's tried to design games, to go up to 5 or 6, I know it's difficult. But it's like, there's so many times when it's like, well, let's just make sure 4 people show up, because if that 5th guy comes, we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Gotta bar the door.
Yeah, exactly.
We're full.
No, I'm super excited to try that out, and it sounds like it's right up my alley as a guy who likes science fiction as his preferred genre. So
nice.
Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty much. And then After Dark is always going to be fun, like we talked about earlier. Don't know what games are going to show up. Last year was also fun because we played Hail Hydra as well. Was that I think Josh or Casey brought that? Casey's in chat. He can confirm if it was him or not. Yeah. But that was a lot of fun to play that. We played like 5-player game of that, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, so. For some reason, whenever I play Hidden Trader games, I always get suspected of being the traitor. I don't know why. I think because I just get nervous that people are going to think I'm the traitor, so then I put off traitor vibes. So.
Oh, sure. I know for sure. I remember specifically that it was Josh and I, because I remember us like making eye contact across the table at one point, and we both flipped over our characters and Hail Hydra! Like that's what's really cool about that, is there's a game beyond when you're revealed. So that's really cool. Yeah.
I was not the Hydra agent. I was Black Panther, and I was noble and good and not a Hydra agent. But I was suspected of being one.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much it for GenCon. I don't know. Is there anything else that you want to talk about regarding the event as a whole, or anything like that?
I don't think so. There's always this kind of pattern with GenCon where it's like just sneaks up on you, and then I get really anxious about it, and like it's just frantic preparing for it, and I think right before it I can start getting excited for it when I'm like on the way.
Right, yeah.
But I think I'm starting to get in that mode now, like we talked about at the beginning with needing a break, and I'm really looking forward to Blob this year, and really looking forward to, hopefully when we talk next time, I'll be talking about all the games I played instead of walking around the event. The exhibit hall.
Instead of all the games you saw.
Yes, exactly. Because I don't need any more games. Like the amount of Kickstarters I've got in the past 4 months is ridiculous. So no more.
I know. I thought I got a lot, but you got like 2 or 3 more than I did.
Yeah, I'm about to talk about another one in Tentacle Time. So,
well, let's go into that. Okay. Tentacle Time. Then, what have you been playing other than Arkham?
Well, the latest Kickstarter I got was Power Rangers: Heroes of the Grid. And I haven't gotten a chance to play it a ton because it just arrived recently and I've had to do other stuff like prep for Gen Con. But I did get like part of a game in last night. And so this is a cooperative game. It goes up to 5 players, I want to say, potentially 6. So speaking of including 5 players. And
I mean, thematically, that would make sense.
Yes, yeah, you gotta include all the Rangers. And yeah, I need to play it more to see how much legs it has, but I really like a lot of the mechanics in the game. It's actually, I'm really impressed with the design of it, because you just see like, oh, it's kind of cashing in on Power Rangers, and of course the Kickstarter had all these expansions and figures, but I think even with just the base game, it's a well-designed game. Like, so basically you are controlling one of the Power Rangers, obviously, depending on how many number of players. In solo you can like control 3 Rangers or something like that. You got a deck of cards, 10 cards that are representing your Ranger with all their different moves they can do. So something you might see in like Sentinels or Street Masters or something like that. And basically, it's super simple because there's just a deployment phase where all the putties come out and all the other bad guys. Yeah. You gotta make your own sound effects. But
do you do that when you? I totally would.
If I was playing with other people, probably.
Oh, you don't sit at your table by yourself going.
Could you imagine, like, the dead of night, just hearing that coming from the game room?
Sad solo putty noises.
Sad solo putty noise, yeah. So there's the deployment phase, and then the action phase, where you're just taking all your Power Rangers actions. So 2 to 3 actions, depending on the number of players. But the cool thing I like about it is there's not like really a turn structure. It's not like, okay, Green Ranger's turn, now Red Ranger's turn. It's like, okay, someone can take an action. Who wants to take one of their actions? And then they take it. And then it just goes. So if someone does want to take all their actions, they can. But it's just kind of like a free form, like, who wants to take an action now? And same thing when you get into combat. It's like, okay, who wants to make an attack? Or the enemy is attacking, who wants to defend it? So I'm really interested to play it multiplayer, because I think it kind of encourages some cool cooperative play of like working together and figure out who's going to do what when. Right. So yeah, it's for being some Power Rangers game that could have easily been just a cash in on nostalgia or the license. Like, I think it's actually a really, really cool, well-designed game. So I'm looking forward to playing it more.
Awesome. That was a Kickstarter that I seriously considered, but that was, I think it was going at the time that I was like, I've done too many Kickstarters.
Yeah.
Like, I need to back off, because I also do a lot. I don't do a lot, but I've done a few of the role-playing game stuff too. Mm-hmm. And of course, those, like, some of those Kickstarters, you back them and like years ago, and you forget they're coming. You know what I mean? Like, that's how all of them are. They just kind of show up, and I'm like, oh shoot, that's right, I backed this 3 years ago. Or whatever. So anyway, what have I been playing? I've been playing D&D. I picked up the Essentials kit. Did I talk about this on the last podcast? I've already forgot what I've talked about on the last podcast. Anyway, I got my daughter. Oh, I talked about it with Casey. Okay, great. So the Essentials kit is like the follow-up product to the starter box. The starter box is a $20, single adventure, 2 to 6 or 3 to 6 player adventure. And then they released the Essentials kit, which is a 2 to 6 player open world adventure that has enough content in it to get player characters up to level 5. And it comes with like truncated rules that cover all the options for level 5. You can make characters of 4 different races, 5 different classes, 5 different backgrounds. So you get like half of the player character options from the PHB. There's a total, you get 2 beautiful maps. You get a bunch of punch out cards that you can use for magic items and initiative and all that. And not only that, but it has a sidekick system where if you're playing with if it's just the DM and one player, you get to basically arrange out these cards that have artwork on one side and then background information on the other side. And you just tell the other player, like, pick your sidekick. And you can do a roleplay session where, like, you see these people at the tavern, and this person comes up and talks to you, like that sort of thing. But I'm playing with my daughter. I actually introduced her to Dungeons & Dragons. Nice. She's 9. We played 2 sessions. She is playing a gnome cleric, and her sidekick is a halfling wizard. And yeah, it's been super fun. She gets really into it. She loves, like, when we started, I told her, I'm like, we basically play a story. Like, you and I play a story together. And she's like, oh, okay, who are you playing? And I'm like, well, you're going to play this character, and I'm going to play literally everything else in the world. Like, any time that there's someone else that you want to talk to or play with, I'm going to play that character. And she's like, oh, okay. And then she just started telling me a story about how, because her character is 9, of course, just like her. She started telling me a story about how her character babysits her little brother, who is 4, just like her actual little brother. Anyway, and it got to the point, like, she was just going and going and going, and I had to stop her and be like, okay, remember that I'm telling the story too, so I'm going to inject some tension here. Like, I'm like, okay, I have to obviously, she's content just narrating what they do in the day. Yeah. And I want to get her on an adventure. I want her to actually do that. So it was fun. For the first session, I actually didn't play the content from the Essentials kit. I ran a version of an adventure called the Delian Tomb, which is a super short dungeon that was created by Matt Colville on YouTube. It's like a 2-room dungeon, 3-room dungeon. So I ran that for her. She had a lot of fun. And then the next time we sat down to play, she completed 2 of the quests, 2 of like the 10 or 12 quests that come with the Essentials kit. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm really glad that she's digging it. I bought her own dice, so awesome. She has pretty blue dice to play with. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I like this. I like the sidekick idea. That's cool, especially.
It's so great
because I feel like there's been a lot of. I've seen a lot more talk recently about kind of the one-on-one type D&D sessions. I think as people are trying to like play with their significant others or their kids or whatnot. Like,
yeah. Yep, and we made a character for my wife, but our schedules have such been that the 3 of us haven't been able to sit down and play at the same time. So hopefully I'll be able to get her and, because it'd be great for her to play with her mom, like the 2 of them playing characters together in D&D would be awesome. But that has been a lot of fun. Other than that, the only other thing, like recently, I just want to mention a mobile game that I picked up, or it's free, but I downloaded it. It's called Teppen. It is a Capcom card game. So there's like 10 characters. You pick your Capcom character. There's Dante from Devil May Cry. There's Rathalos from Monster Hunter. There's Albert Wesker from Resident Evil. So they have 10 different Capcom characters. Mega Man. You pick that, and then you just play against opponents in a card game that takes about 20 minutes roughly, and it's super fun. It's really interesting. It's very simple in that you have 3 lanes. And you play a unit to a lane, so you can have 3 units in play at most. And the units have it's an active time battle system. So the units have a bar that fills up, and when the bar fills up, they attack the opponent. And not only that, but each card, like the higher cost cards, when you play it, the higher the cost, the longer it takes to play it. So your 2 or 3 cost cards you can play more often, but your 6 cost card you have to wait 6 seconds for it to become available, quote unquote. So it's a weird blend between cooldown, like ability management, and playing a card game. And it's just interesting enough to just interesting enough for me to have been playing it pretty frequently. So I would highly suggest that anyone who likes mobile card games try out Teppen. Again, it's free, so there's no reason not to try it out for at least a game or 2. But yeah, ever since I quit Hearthstone, I've needed something to fill
Need another
that.
fix. Yeah, I actually saw that one when I was scrolling through games recently, and I almost downloaded it. But maybe I'll give it a try.
It's a fun little time waster, and it's really cool. Like, seeing some of these characters that I'm already familiar with and how they're being adapted to this card game. So, like, Ryu I know how he functions in Street Fighter, because I played him, in Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Third Strike, and in 5. And it's cool to see that in the card game, to be like, oh, that's how they chose to do this character. Or like Chun-Li, or Mega Man. So that's fun from like a design standpoint as well. But otherwise, it's pretty simple.
Nice.
But that's... Oh, one last thing I'll mention real quick is I just finished watching Chernobyl. Which, if you like... It's only 5 episodes. It's 5 hours long. But if... Casey says, oh, how fun. Yes, exactly. If you like very depressing...
If you're looking to be depressed.
It is super depressing. Like, it is so depressing. Because, like... you look at the Chernobyl incident in 1986, like, that's probably a low point
I don't
for the
expect
human race.
Happy-go-lucky material based on that.
Exactly. But it's still it's very well made. It's a very compelling story. It's something that's an incident that I've always been interested in, because I have ancestors who are from the Ukraine. So that's like, when you think, like, what's the Ukraine famous for? Oh, this thing that happened that's super bad, but also because from like a science fiction standpoint, there have been a lot of interesting stories that have come out of that. But Chernobyl, like the series, it sticks to what actually happened, and it's more representative of what happened than it is trying to be factually straight. So, for instance, all the characters, they're all British actors, and they're speaking with their normal accents. Right. They don't try to do Russian accents. So it's a little distracting at first, but you get over it pretty quick. And then also they condense a lot of, so like there were dozens of scientists that were working on this crew. They condense those and represent them with, I think, 1 or 2 individual characters. But anyway, it's super good. It's on Hobogo or HBO Go, as the laymen call it. Yeah, check it out if you're into depressing miniseries.
I've definitely heard nothing but good things about it. I just haven't gotten to watching it. We'll see.
Yeah, it's super good. But I think that just about does it. Any final thoughts for our last episode before GenCon 2019?
No final thoughts other than I'm looking forward to seeing as many people as I can see and seeing everyone at the listener event.
Yes, yeah, and again, just as a reminder, I know we've said it before, but even if you didn't get a ticket, show up to the listener event and play some Arkham.
Yeah.
The tickets just reserve you the swag, which is pretty kick-ass this year.
Yep.
All right, well, I'll just run down a couple of these. If you have any feedback for the show, feel free to email us at mythosbusterspod@gmail.com. You can @mythosbusters on Twitter. You can go directly to our website, mythosbusterspodcast.wordpress.com. Obviously, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/mythosbusters. And then finally, we haven't talked about it in a while, but if you want to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, you can name a host and an impression. It's been a while since we've done this, but the named host will read the review in the voice or doing an impression of the person that you call out. So yeah, those are super fun when we get them. So feel free to keep that up. And we love the 5-star reviews, obviously. So thank you very much to all of our live listeners tonight for listening in. Thank you to you, listeners, and we will hopefully see you guys at GenCon.